Hello everybody! It is the 31st of August, which means it is the last day before we reach a new month, which also means it is time for this month's monthly wrap. Welcome to the monthly wrap for August. Okay, as per usual, we're going to go through the stats first. So, this month I read a total of 12 books. They consisted of 4 fantasy, 3 contemporary, 1 sci-fi, 1 mystery, 1 historical fiction, 1 urban fantasy, and 1 autobiography. As far as age group was concerned, I read a total of 7 YA, 4 adult, 1 middle grade. As far as whether it was a tome or not, I read 3 tomes, 8 half-tomes, and 1 pamphlet, for a total of 4,682 pages, which roughly ends up being around about 156 pages per day. As for my star ratings, I have 4 5 stars, 3 4 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 2 stars, and 1 1 star. This was a very pick and mix up and down sort of month, and you will learn more about that as we go through. So let's do this. Let's begin the August monthly wrap. The month that was August. It was a very, as I said, very pick and mix kind of month. As per usual, we're going to start off with the books that I DNF'd this month, and the first book that I DNF'd this month was Nevernight by J. Kristoff. This is they say that this book is a YA fantasy, but I am here to make a rebuttal. Okay, this book has a ton of swearing and an extremely graphic sexual assault / abuse scene, extremely graphically detailed, both of those categories, swearing and graphic sexual assault and abuse for a YA novel, all appearing in Chapter 1. Yeah, great way to start off a YA. I did not like this book for a number of different reasons, and those were 2 of them. Another reason is I just don't like J. Kristoff's writing style. It is extremely flowery. For those of you who don't know what a flowery writing style is, it's more that it's not your straightforward, typical sort of writing style. A lot of his writing is shrouded in metaphor, and his metaphors just... yeah. In my opinion, just mine, they're not that good. So I have seen a number of reviews from people who have actually finished this book, and I'm happy to know that I DNF'd a book that does not get any better. Apparently one of the lines that J. Kristoff likes to use all the time is that one of the guys in this book looks as beautiful as a fresh suicide. Really? Or how about the boy with the silverware smile that keeps appearing apparently every 5 pages? I'm glad I DNF'd this book. I think a big part of my issue with this book, however, was the swearing and the graphic sexual assault / abuse scene taking place in Chapter 1 of a YA novel. I do think the marketers are to blame for that, but J. Kristoff, I'm sure he had a leg to stand on when he could have said to the marketers, hey guys, this is not a YA book, it's an adult book, why are you marketing it incorrectly? I DNF'd this book, and I'm glad that I did. I will not be continuing on with this series at all. The second book that I DNF'd this month I do feel rather guilty about, and that is Sabrina by Garth Nix. This is actually a book that was recommended to me by a subscriber. One of the goals that I have for 2020 when it comes to my reading is to read 2 books recommended by a subscriber. By subscribers. I've already read one of them. I believe I read that book in March, and this was to be the second one. I did not enjoy this book. I found this book to be extremely overly descriptive as well. I don't enjoy or appreciate overly descriptive works, because I just find them to be way too distracting from the actual plot. So I have spoken to the subscriber who recommended this book to me. There are no hard feelings, which I really appreciate. Thank you. And that subscriber has gone on to recommend like 8 more books to me, so I'm going to pick one of them soon and read one of them, but this one just wasn't for me. I'm not going to recommend any of the books that I've DNF'd because I DNF'd them, so I didn't get that far in to find something about it to recommend for you guys, but yeah. That's Sabrina by Garth Nix. The third and final book, because I DNF 3 books this month. Usually I DNF 1, I DNF 3. The third and final book that I DNF this month was Pan's Labyrinth by Guillermo del Toro and Consuela Funke. So, okay, with this book I need to be clear with what I'm saying here. The reason why I DNF'd this book had nothing to do with anything that Guillermo del Toro or Consuela Funke did wrong. Not at all. I was in a bit of a mood. I had just come off reading a book that I was not enjoying at all. I pushed my way through it, and I needed something to really raise my spirits and raise my morale, and this book wasn't doing it for me. There's nothing wrong with this book though. I think it's a beautiful book, but for at that time, I needed something that was going to take me from 0 to 1 million, and I think this book maybe took me to 500, so I DNF'd it. Unfortunately, this book is a library book, so I don't know if I'm going to pick this book back up again, but again, I can't stress enough, Guillermo del Toro and Consuela Funke haven't done anything wrong with this book. It was just my mood. It was a mood DNF. Those are the books that I DNF'd this month. Let's get on to the books that I actually read this month. The first book that I read this month was The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a YA historical fiction, and it follows a girl whose name is Liesel. Shout out to the Sound of Music. Liesel is put up for adoption, or well, not put up for adoption, she's given to a family by her mother. So, let me explain. The setting of this book is that it's set in World War II, and Liesel and her mother are Jewish. Liesel's mother believes that Liesel will have a much better life if she's raised by two parents that are not Jewish, so she hands Liesel over to these two non-Jewish people. This book follows Liesel's life. Now, the interesting thing about this book is that it is narrated by the one and only Death. However, if you are planning on picking up this book purely for the sake that it is narrated by Death, stop, wait, heed my warning. I did that. I picked up this book knowing nothing about it purely for the sake that it was narrated by Death, and that's it. And I walked away incredibly disappointed. While this book is narrated by Death, and while the first couple of chapters were okay, it was good, there was a little bit of Death world building that went on there. For the majority of the book, I have to admit, I totally forgot that Death was there. I don't think we needed Death in this book. I think one of the only reasons, probably, in my opinion, that Markus Zusak put Death in this book was to put a twist on a historical fiction. But Death being the narrator is not the point. So if you plan on picking up this book, not because you like historical fiction, but because Death narrates this book, I'm going to make a little suggestion. I'm going to recommend don't pick up this book. Instead, pick up this book, Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This book follows Death, and it has amazing world building, and it is all about Death and how Death does its job. So, for Death, pick up this book, not this one. For historical fiction, pick up this one. I can't rate this on does it fit the brief because I'm not a historical fiction reader. The only other historical fictional book that I read this month was Once by Morris Gleitzman. I'll put a picture of it up there. And I'm just not a fan of this work. So I purely based my rating on entertainment level alone. I gave this book 2 stars. Yeah, just not my type of book. The second book that I read this month was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. So this is an adult dark fantasy book that follows a man who goes back to his childhood home, and while he is there, he regresses back into a memory of his childhood when he was 10 years old. For me, the first half of this book reads more like a contemporary. The second half of this book is where the dark adult fantasy comes into play. Now, I also want to say that I don't feel that this book is an adult fantasy. We spoke a little earlier on about Nevernight and how I felt that that was not a YA book. I just as much feel that this is not an adult book. It is marketed as an adult dark fantasy, but aside from one little paragraph that happens around about the halfway mark in this book that involves a father and son dynamic. That could be depicted as an adult scene. It's very short though, and if you blink you miss it, but the rest of it to me reads more as YA. Neil Gaiman is also the author of Coraline. Now, I have not read the book of Coraline. I plan to at some point, but I have seen the film, and to me the film is, while it is dark, it's still a children's film. So I'm a bit surprised because I feel like The Ocean at the End of the Lane is written in the same vein as Coraline, so I feel like this book should be a YA. I loved this book. I thought it was really fun. I was really entertained by it. So on entertainment level alone, I gave this book 5 stars. When I add in does it suit the brief, I don't think it does because it doesn't read like an adult book. And so I took off 1 star for that and gave this book a total of 4 stars. I highly recommend this book to anyone who loves Coraline because, as I said, this book kind of reads along the same vein. Trigger warning, drowning. Okay, if anything to do with drowning is a trigger for you, know that drowning occurs in this book. The third book that I read this month was Bloodlines by Rochelle Mead. This is the first book in the spin-off series to the Vampire Academy series. So, I picked up this book after DNFing Nevernight, and I'm really happy that I did. I had this book just lying around my home. I purchased it a long time ago, but never read it. And I loved how Vampire Academy ended so much that I couldn't wait to keep reading, even if it was a spin-off. For those of you who have read Vampire Academy, this book follows 3 of those characters quite closely. Sydney Sage, Adrian Ivashkov, and Jill Mastrano. Now, if I want to give a very high recommendation, if you have not... Okay, let's not knock our bookshelf, Mr. Francie. If you have not read the Vampire Academy series, I highly recommend you read that first, because this book is a whole pile of spoilers when it comes to that series. So, definitely I highly recommend either reading that series first or knowing you are going to be spoiled for that series when you go into this one if you have not read that one already. Now, this book is a YA urban fantasy and it was so much fun. I'm not going to talk too much about what it's about because it will provide spoilers for that series and I'm not going to do that. But I will say that aside from the wonderful plot that was this first book in this series, there are 3 mysteries that we are dealing with that are interwoven within the plot, and those mysteries were a lot of fun to try and work out what was going on, and the first mystery reveal was really good. The second one was even better. The third one was amazing. This book, to have the amazing plot that it has, to have 3 mysteries within the book, and have each reveal for each mystery be better than the last, on entertainment level and does it fit the brief, I gave this book 5 stars. It was absolutely incredible. I have book 2 on my September. We're doing well. I have book 2 on my September TBR, and I'm looking forward to reading that one there. The 4th book that I read this month was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a Middle Eastern mythological fantasy. It is YA, and it is a dual perspective book that follows 2 different characters, Nahri and Ali. Nahri's perspective has been described as bad romancy before, and I completely agree, so I'm just going to go with that description, bad romancy. Meanwhile, we have Ali. Yes, Prince Ali, fabulous he, Ali Ababa. My favourite Disney film of all time is Aladdin, and I would love to read the original Aladdin, however, I can't seem to find it. It seems to be nothing but a small excerpt from a massive compendium book called 1001 Arabian Nights, and yeah, I want a full book of the original Aladdin. But anyway, moving on. This did give me Aladdin vibes. It is set in the Middle East. There's a magic carpet. The premise of this book is that with Nahri is a swindler / fake fortune teller who makes her money by swindling people. One day she ends up summoning a jinn, or as we call it, a genie, and things happen from there that show us that there is more to Nahri than meets the eye. As for Ali's perspective, Ali is a prince, as I've already said, and Ali doesn't appreciate the way that the culture is and the laws are where he lives, and he wants to change things, but he doesn't have a lot of support around him for that change. Ali's side, therefore, is rather political as well, which I really did appreciate. Okay, let's talk truth. There are moments with this book that I love this book, and there are moments with this book where I don't love this book. And my thoughts on each perspective changed as I went along. Sometimes I really loved Nahri's side of things and didn't like Ali's side of things, and then at other times I liked Ali's side of things and didn't like Nahri's side of things, so it just was ever-changing for me. Ultimately, the book certainly fits the brief. It definitely is a YA fantasy. It definitely is set in the Middle East. It has all those Middle East feels. The setting is amazing. The way that S.A. Chakraborty writes the setting for this world is really well done. But in saying that, let's talk about entertainment level. I probably would give this a 2-star on entertainment level alone. So in total, I gave this book 3 stars. I will not be continuing on with the series because this is a book that I couldn't wait to finish. Like, I got 3/4 of the way through and I just couldn't wait to finish. It is a very slow read, so I only recommend this book to anyone who, A, wants to read a Middle Eastern-inspired, mythologically inspired fantasy that is a slow read and takes a long time to get to the premise. Otherwise, I don't recommend this book. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay, but I won't be continuing on with the series. The next book that I picked up was Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. Okay, let's talk about this book. This is a YA fantasy and I gave this book 2 stars. Okay, I did not like this book. And I was saddened by that because I wanted to love Adam Silvera and I just did not like this book. I don't feel this book completely fits the brief. While there are certain fantastical elements, they are very few and far between. This book to me reads like a contemporary that has a small sprinkling of fantasy placed in there, and it just didn't grab my attention. Also, from the blurb, to me, the premise of the book kind of read as 2 brothers. Both who receive power. One who wants to use his powers for good, and the other who wants to use his powers for evil. Will this be an ultimate battle to the death? It was nothing like that. I was incredibly disappointed by this book. I gave it 2 stars. I don't think I need to say anything more than that. Other than, while I was reading this book, I was incredibly disappointed in it. So I ended up going over to Goodreads looking for a spoiler-free review to let me know if the book got better over time. While I did not find that, I did find a review that I am very thankful for, and I've already commented below that person's review and thanked them so much for saying that if you don't like Infinity Sun, wait till you read Adam Silvera's contemporary books because they are so much better. And if you do love Infinity Sun, just wait till you read Adam Silvera's contemporary books because guess what? They're so much better. I'm glad this person wrote that because this person at least made me feel like I could trust Adam Silvera enough to pick up a contemporary book of his. But as far as his fantasy is concerned, I do not recommend this book. 2 stars. The next book that I read couldn't have gone any better for me. It was The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. This is a YA contemporary LGBTIQ+ male romance book. Okay, that was a lot to say. We're going to call this a YA contemporary. Okay. So this book follows Cal Jr., his father, Cal Sr., and his mother. One day, Cal Sr. is called to be told that he is going to be part of an apprenticeship for NASA, which means that the 3 members of that family need to pack up their lives. They're uprooted from where they're living, and they move into that center. Anyway, meanwhile, Cal Jr. is a teenager who is an aspiring journalist, so much so that he has created a ton of social media platforms. He has a massive following, and he reports hard-hitting news to them. He has done so well as a teenager that BuzzFeed have even offered to give him an internship to give him a foot in the door. But when Cal Sr. packs up his life and has him shipped off with them to Texas, all of that seems to go right down the drain. When Cal Jr. gets to the training center, he meets another boy whose name is Leon. These two start to get to know each other and slowly form a relationship. I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. This book is so extremely well written. I think this is a wonderful representation for the LGBTIQ+ community. The relationship is written really well. It's not insta love. It is a relationship that takes a very long time to build. I just absolutely love this book, and every time I hold this book I say the same thing, so I'm going to say it again here. Phil Stamper has another book coming out in February of 2021. By any chance, Phil Stamper, if you're watching and you want to send me an arc of that book, I will gladly read it and review it. And if Phil Stamper doesn't send me an arc of that book, I'm still going to purchase it anyway, because I love this and I trust Phil Stamper so much after reading this book. He is amazing. I highly recommend you pick this book up. Diversify your reading. Read an amazing LGBTIQ+ book. 5 stars. The next book that I read this month was Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is the second book in the Arc of a Scythe series. It follows on from Scythe. I thought this book was really good. This is a YA sci-fi. There's not really a lot I can say about this book without giving my spoilers for that one. So I'm just going to say that I enjoyed this book, and the ending, man, can Neil Shusterman write an ending. His ending was so amazing. I never would have guessed that it was going to end that way, and I really want to read book 3. A lot of people have asked me if I'm going to read The Toll. I am, which is book 3 in the Arc of the Scythe series. I am going to read it, but I'm going to wait a bit before I do, because I'm just going to wait a little bit, but I am going to read it. I enjoyed this. Does it fit the brief? Yes, entertainment level was very good. I end up giving this book 4 stars. And now I'd like to welcome you to a very quick presentation called the only 1-star book for this month. It is called The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. This book is an adult mystery. It is an adult mystery that is a multi-perspective book, which means we follow more than one perspective. I had so many issues with this book. Now, I have read mysteries before. In fact, one of my favourite mysteries that I've read this year is The Girl on the Train, which is right here. I had a lot of fun with that book. Not so with this one. Okay, so let's talk. First of all, let's talk about the fact that we are trying to solve a murder that I really don't care so much about. Then, let's talk about the fact that the way that Ellie Griffiths wrote this multi-perspective choice really got to me. We start off with our first perspective, and we're with that first perspective for 7 chapters. I have not had that before. Generally speaking, with multi-perspectives, they alternate every chapter or every 2 or 3 chapters or something like that. This was 7 chapters of one perspective, so it lulls you into a false sense of security to think that you are reading a singular perspective book. Just when you get comfortable with that very first perspective, boom, you're changed over to a completely new perspective, and that perspective is an investigator. Not a private eye, but like a cop/investigator. You guys should know this by now. I don't like mysteries that follow detectives. And we got a detective perspective in this book. I don't like it. I just feel, to me, it ruins a book because you're watching someone whose job it is to do this sort of thing. I'd rather just watch everyday humans trying to solve a mystery. Then, after 7 chapters of this detective, and finally getting used to this detective, boom, we're given another perspective. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Not to mention, the reveal was horrible. So, I'm sorry, Ellie Griffiths, and if anyone wants to give me a recommendation to an Ellie Griffiths book that they think was absolutely amazing and that I will love, let me know in the comments below. But as for, this is an ARC copy, by the way, that's why I keep turning it. As for the Stranger Diaries, I want to say 0, but the minimum rating you can give on Goodreads is a 1. So, not surprisingly, 1 star for the Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffith. Just horrible. Just horrible. The next book that I read this month could not have gone any better for me. It was History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. I've done a review of this book and I'll leave it up there. I've also done a review of The Gravity of Us, which I will leave up there where I would have left with the other book. This is a YA dual perspective LGBTIQ plus contemporary. With this dual perspective, we are following a timeline of then and now. So there is a central event that occurs in this book, and every first chapter we follow what happened then, so what happened prior to this event taking place and leading up to it, and every second chapter we follow now, what has happened post that event and since then, from then on. This book is absolutely amazing. There's so many things I want to say, but I don't have a lot of time to do so I'm going to try and do it really, really quickly. So, this book follows the perspective of Griffin. Griffin has 2 best friends. One of them's named Theo, the other is named Wade. Griffin ends up dating Theo for a long time. They are very madly in love. And then one day Theo is forced to move interstate. And so Griffin does the whole, if you love them enough to set them free and let them go. So he does. He gives Theo permission to date while he's interstate. While Theo is interstate, he meets a guy named Jackson. They end up dating and then Theo dies. This is not a spoiler because it's all revealed in chapter 1. We then go through then moments leading up to Theo's death, and now moments that have occurred past Theo's death. This is such an amazing book. Adam Silvera not only writes LGBTIQ plus really, really well, he also writes grief and loss in a very raw and real way. And our main character, Griffin, just so happens to have OCD. Adam Silvera also writes that in a very raw and a very real way. This book is 100% amazing. Does it stick to the brief? Yes. Adam Silvera set out to achieve something and he absolutely eclipsed what he set out to achieve. It was so good. And entertainment level? 5 stars. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. It was absolutely amazing. My next plan was to read Skyward. I'll quickly put a picture of it up here. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, but I didn't want to rush anything, so I decided to put Skyward onto my TBR for September and instead read the first book I planned on originally reading in September, which was Unstoppable, My Life So Far by Maria Sharapova. This is an adult autobiography written by tennis player Maria Sharapova. Very, very quickly. If you don't know, Maria Sharapova is a former high-profile tennis player who has won multiple Grand Slams and was world number 1 many, many times. She was very successful. One day, there was a bit of an issue that occurred when she tested positive for taking a drug known as Meldonium, which is kind of like a paracetamol over in Europe. But anyway, whatever. So she ended up getting suspended from the tour for a little while. This book, while it does discuss that, primarily this book focuses on everything that had occurred in her life from the moment she was born up to that point. This was such an engaging book. I love this. I highly recommend this to tennis fans. I highly recommend this to Sharapova fans. And I also highly recommend this to anyone who wants to read a really well done autobiography. I gave this book 5 stars. I have not reviewed it at the time you're watching this, but I do plan on reviewing this book, so you can go and check that out in my reviews playlist. But this was, really, really amazing. I planned on taking 4 days to read it. I read it in 2. That's how good it was. So, there you go. This is the next book I'm going to talk about, but in fact I actually read this. This is out of order. I read this before I read Unstoppable. And this book is called Beartown. It is an adult speculative fiction that revolves around a town, funny enough, called Beartown, where everyone is obsessed with hockey, and one day a girl is sexually abused/assaulted, the R word, and everyone has their thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it. Sounds amazing, right? Yeah, kind of. Here's a few little warnings though. 1, this is a character-driven book. If you're not a fan of that, know it going in. 2, it takes 200 pages to get to that point. So, if you're happy for a very slow read, pick this up. I thought this book was okay, but I had to factor in those things. I don't like character development books. I don't like that it took 200 pages to get to the point of the book, and ultimately I gave this book 3 stars. Somehow I still had time to read one more book over the course of 2 days, and I did! I managed to do it, so there we go! I read this book, Terry Pratchett's The Witch's Vacuum Cleaner and Other Stories. This is a YA compendium of this is a YA fantasy. No it's not. This is a middle grade fantasy, which is a compendium of short stories. I really love this book. I'm not going to say too much about it other than I thought it was amazing, it was hilarious, it was really cute, it was a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars. Those are the books I read in the month of August. This video has taken far too long, so I'm going to cut it off right there. Thank you so much for watching. Letting you guys go peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. What did you read this month? Let me know in the comments below. Until then, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you would like to. It would really help my channel, and I'll see you soon. Mwah. Bye guys, happy reading. Bye.